So Russia now responding after President Trump called for the U.S. to resume nuclear testing, with the Kremlin saying, quote, all countries are developing their defense systems, but this is not a nuclear test. If someone abandons the moratorium, Russia will act accordingly. Joining us now is retired four-star general, Fox News senior strategic analyst, chairman of the Institute of the Study for War, General Jack Keane. General, what's your reaction to the president saying what he said, be the first time since '92 we test, and Russia's response?
Yeah, well, it's been speculation for years, Brian, that, Russia and China are secretly testing nuclear warheads. Whether that's a fact or not remains to be seen. I mean, certainly Trump, our president, gets classified information, whether that's a reality or not. But I also think that what's likely happening here is Russia just recently announced that the testing of delivery systems, a cruise missile and an underwater drone, not the warhead, the delivery systems of a potential warhead itself. And the president may be reacting to something like that. Listen, where the president is on nuclear warheads and nuclear weapons is he wants to see a de-escalation of it. He wants to see a reduction of it. He's not looking for any escalation of this whatsoever. And, he's attempted to bring China and Russia together to work towards that end, and China has stiffed that process entirely. And as we all know, Russia is increasing their nuclear weapons, particularly their tactical nuclear weapons. So I think more to follow on here on the pathway ahead.
President says, I give it a 12 out of a 1 to 10 scale. His meeting with President Xi. They didn't really bring up Taiwan. I know that's a big focus of our war games and our worries. We got Japan and South Korea to commit to spending more on defense. How would you rate, from what we know, how would you rate the trip?
Yeah, I would give it pretty high marks. I mean, the whole trip itself, and also with President Xi. I mean, President Trump walked into that meeting with Xi as the undisputed world's global leader, a position that President Xi has stated time and time again that they want to replace the United States as the world's global leader. And there's no doubt that President Trump has his wind at his back in this thing. Look at China's partner, a major partner in Iran, has been set back for years by Israel and the United States. And look at Russia. And they're in their fourth year of the war. They haven't taken a major city since 22. They've gained 0.6% in the last year. They're taking over 1,000 casualties a year. This last offensive has failed to accomplish any of its objectives. Their economy is tanking, and now they're getting sanctions imposed on them. And also, President Trump is upgunning Ukraine militarily. So Russia is in a much more weakened position than what took place almost 3 or 4 years ago when they decided to form this partnership. Look at it now. So, yes, I think major accomplishments here. They've been noted certainly here on Fox for the last 24 hours. The one thing I would say about the temporary truce here and the reduction in the tensions, President Xi in the past has failed to come through with his promises, much like Putin. Fentanyl, 7 years ago, made a deal to reduce it. Didn't happen. A number of years ago in the first Trump negotiation with him, he agreed to purchase American products to the tune of $500 billion. He came up short, $211 billion. He's made more promises here with fentanyl, made more promises with purchasing and the like. We have to see if he keeps his promises. And certainly the Trump administration is very much aware of the shortcomings coming out of the last deal.
And, General, remember, last time that was signed in 2019, the president's term's up in 2020. This time, if you're going to screw us, we got 3.5 years to deal with you differently. Also, China is supporting the Iranian missile program. They're sending some of the materials there so Iran can rebuild. We could easily clamp down on that. We've spotted it. The Wall Street Journal has a story I'd love for you to comment on, and that is the president's looking at military sites in Venezuela. They blew up another one of the drug boats yesterday. How serious do you think the president is on this, or is this to rattle Maduro's cage so he goes for a smooth exit?
Well, I don't think we know that answer, but clearly bringing an aircraft carrier into this is clearly a demonstration of force. I've always said, as an Army guy, the symbol of American military superiority is an aircraft carrier. If you had to pick one thing, that is it. And we're bringing that there. Obviously, it has fighters on board that can do damage on land to Maduro's drug labs and other things that are supporting the narco trafficking that he's doing. You know, narco trafficking and his government have become one and the same because he's taking the revenue from it. That's unprecedented throughout Latin America in the collusion that's taken place there. And that's why the pressure is. I think the pressure is on the people supporting Maduro, the elites, putting this kind of pressure on them, saying, why do we continue to support this guy when he's bringing all of this down on us? And obviously we're going to start losing the revenue as a result of his association with the narco traffickers. Whether he actually uses the fighters to take down the drug labs itself remains to be seen. We don't know the answer to that. But that certainly is something that he's threatening, and certainly he would like to see these elites force Maduro out of power. I don't think there's any plan here to conduct a physical regime change, which would obviously be a military invasion of Venezuela. But certainly the president would accept, and his team, the elites moving Maduro out of there to some kind of transition. And I think that is one of the objectives that the CIA is also trying to achieve by undermining this regime inside the country.
And General, as you've always told me, one of the big things is not only are they a dictatorship and hostile to us, but they have their arms open to Iran, to Russia, and to China. Right now, and that's a very rich country. That has a lot of resources in that country, and the president does not want to tolerate it anymore. Thanks so much, General. I appreciate it.
Want even more Fox News on YouTube? Become a Fox News Patriot today. Click join to find out how.